Welcome to the Instant Speed Podcast. This is In Response, and I've got Brodie Spurlock, who was recent winner of a battle-hardened and one of the more fascinating winners or champions out there for various reasons, one of which is your age, and we'll get to that in just a second, Brodie. But first, I want to welcome you to the show and just ask, how you doing, man? It's nice to have you here.
I'm doing well, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, that's great. You had the big win at the Battle Hardened in SCGCON in Dallas, and I met you, actually, more specifically, I met your mother first, your mother, Sharlotte. I played against your mother in a side event. She was on chain in a close match, and afterwards we were just chatting, and she mentioned, oh, you're her son, both of her sons, yourself and your brother Seth, I believe is your brother's name?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so yourself and your brother Seth were both at the tournament, at the calling that was going on in Indianapolis, and she was mentioning about how, my son's a pretty good card player, and, I'm here to support my son. And then as we were kind of following along, I was just like, Brodie Spurlock, that's a name I'm going to remember. And now here you are as the winner of the Battle Hardened in SCG Con in Dallas. So first I want to say is congratulations to you. And furthermore is, let's talk a little bit about the deck that you played. And just, so you were on Viserai, right?
Yes.
Okay, now, what led you to kind of land on Viserai? Now, in reality, I mean, let's just be real here. It's one of the stronger options. It's been very popular. We've seen all the meta-analysis and just the spike of how many Viserai players there are. But was there any other options for you landing on Viserai for when you won the Battle Hardened, or was Viserai basically your choice from the get-go?
I would say a big part of it was that I had already been playing in CC for several months, and so I already kind of had that experience of just like the play patterns under my belt with that hero. And I think that I also kind of recognized that he was probably the strongest deck in the field going in, so those two things combined kind of made it a no-brainer for playing Viserai. I think there were like 3 decks that I could, if I had equal experience with every hero, that I could see myself like potentially having taken into that event, which were Viserai, Oldhim, and Kano, because I think that Kano has a lot of like explosive potential and is really good at just killing his opponent in response on their turn, which in Blitz, if he can just, slam out 20 damage while lethal's on the table relatively consistently, I think he can take down a lot of tournaments that way, as long as he gets relatively lucky. And as Viserai, that was one of the matchups I was less sure about, because I feel like even if I get a really explosive start, the fact that Kano can kill me on my turn before taking any damage is rather terrifying. And so yeah, those are kind of the 3 decks that I was considering, but at the end of the day, I felt like Viserai had a good matchup into pretty much everything except maybe Kano, and I already had experience on him, so that's why I went that route.
Now, the other options you're talking about, obviously, you said just the explosivity of what Kano can do. Trust me, I've been there, I've done that, I've seen it. It's incredible. But leaning towards Viserai, you were also playing, you're saying, were you playing Viserai in CC as well?
Yes. So when I started the game in kind of really early December, right after Tariq Patel had won Nationals with Briar. And so I was like, this seems like a good deck. It was relatively cheap compared to some of the other options. So that's where I started, was with Briar. And then after the bans, I already had all this Runeblade equipment, and Viserai seemed pretty well positioned in kind of like the post-Briar, pre-Everfest meta that no one really talks about. So I started playing OTK Viserai then, and then I've been on that hero ever since.
Is that your main now, as it were? Are you saying that you got into the game relatively late compared to most other players? When you're coming in right after Tales of Aria in December, you weren't there necessarily for the chain meta or everything prior to that, the ninja meta, as it were. But settling on Viserai, is this something that you feel moving forward is kind of like your identity? I know a lot of players typically don't necessarily adhere to any one particular hero, but there are some that just really lock into what they love and play it through and through. Is Viserai your guy now?
I would definitely say he's kind of my main. I have the most experience and success on him by far. So I kind of have, like, I'm partial to him in that sense. I also just really like the, play patterns of that deck in general. I think my 2 favorite heroes, just kind of in a vacuum, like, outside of like metas and current formats, are Viserai and Chain. actually like the very first time I played Flesh and Blood was with chain like pre-constructed blitz decks, just like the Monarch blitz decks, and I really liked that hero from the get-go. So I overall like yes, primarily Viscerai, but also just Rune Blades. Like I just right now I'm kind of just a Rune Blade guy in general.
Well, you picked the right one, I guess, because I don't think there was ever a time where Runeblade was, not really good. As far as as long as I've been playing the game, it's been Chain into Briar, now into Viscerai, and throughout the tournament. Let's talk a little bit about Dallas here. Throughout the tournament, obviously you've had several tournaments under your belt by then. The big stage and just the massive field of players wasn't that intimidating, unless it still was. Did it get easier as you attended more of these big tournaments? I saw you in Indianapolis, and then you were in SCGCON in Dallas. How many tournaments did you have prior, like big ones that you had prior to this win in Dallas? And was it getting easier and easier for you as you attended more?
I do think that having already kind of been to an SCGCon, being indie like before that one, kind of made it easier. I knew what to expect more. Um, those three, like the Calling and Battle Hardened in Indy, and then the Battle Hardened in Dallas, were definitely like the biggest events I'd played. So I mean, it was still kind of intimidating. There was a level of like I understand how I guess important this event is compared to the local armories I play every week and stuff like and like there was more pressure to perform, I guess. But like I I also played I played Magic. I started playing when I was 13, and I had gone to a Grand Prix kind of right before COVID. So I already sort of knew what that scene looked like. But like to answer your question, yes, having already been to Indy kind of prepared me a little bit more for what it would look like and made it easier, but it was still, I don't know, a tiny bit overwhelming and intimidating and just because it was a big tournament with a lot of people.
Yeah, I could say this, that despite the fact that I've been to some of these bigger tournaments, and obviously I'm more so on the broadcast side, that's where I want to be. But playing in this big tournaments, it doesn't get easier. Even the pro quests seem intimidating to me, and I can never get over that hump of those jitters of those first matchups. And even when your record gets better and better and better, it still becomes like, it just seems like, all right, well, my opponent's going to get better and better and better, and it's not gonna get easier. So speaking of the difficulty of your opponents, as obviously as you progress through the Swiss rounds, the opponents became better. But was there one particular matchup that was just stood out for you as being, you know, more challenging than the rest? Now, this could either be because the player was really good, the hero was a tough matchup for you, or just in general, things were not working out.
I think one of the scariest for me was round 5 in Swiss. I was paired up against a Rhinar, and I think the Rhinar Viscerai matchup is Viscerai favored for sure, but it also depends a lot on who goes first. I think that both of those decks can do kind of ridiculous things if they get a good draw on the play. Viscerai could make upwards of 10 rune chance, and Rhinar can intimidate so many cards out of your hand that he can push a ton of free damage through. And so it was round 5. I was 3-1 at this point, knowing that if I lost another round at any point, I was probably out of top 8 contention because I had my first loss early and only so many X2s could get in. And if I lost again before round 7 or 8, it was pretty much over. So I go second against this Rhinar. And on turn 1, they had Blood Rush Bellow discarding a 6. So Rhinar intimidated. I was down to 3 cards. And then it was like Claw into Swing Big for a total threatening 20 total damage. So I blocked with 3 cards and Bloodsheet Skeleton and still went down to 10. Which so that
Yeah.
that was terrifying.
Well, I mean, that's the worst part is, like you mentioned, all those intimidations just means that you're either not blocking with the card that you might want to, or it's just a free pass, right? It's just easy street, straight away, right to face, and there's nothing you can do. How did you recover from that? Obviously, eating the 10 damage and donating 3 cards, momentum is now in Reinar's favor. How did you bounce back?
So it was the very first turn of the game. So I got to redraw and I got to put on my own pressure, but I was 10 life behind. So at first I was when I got my first turn of that game, I was kind of struggling with like trying to stay in a good mindset and not like already accept defeat because I was so far behind. Um so that alone was kind of like the psychological game. I was trying all day to just kind of like focus on my lines and focus on like, make the best play here. I'm playing the game because I love playing the game, and then if, I get a little bit lucky and things work out, I'll move on. So that was kind of the first hurdle, is just um not already feeling defeated. But I think I basically just kind of played as carefully as possible, trying to pressure Reinar, and I think if he had had like another Blood Rush Bellow turn, there probably would have been no way that I won the game. But thankfully that didn't happen. I was able to do a couple like medium, 11 damage being threatened turns into like one of Viscerai's massive Sonata turns, and eventually get there. I think the final score was very close, like 2-1 or something, and then I barely won. But the biggest like thing that I remember being hard about that matchup was more the mental game than actually the lines. Because I mean, I just played out my best hand every turn and eventually was able to get tempo back. But it was hard to not be feel very defeated after that turn 0 from Renner.
Oh, I was gonna say, I mean, part of it is just how do you not feel, no pun intended, but intimidated by the fact that you're starting the game at half of your opponent's health. Like they just got a free ride to crush you for that much, and even if it's turn 0 and you can draw back up, you're already starting at a disadvantage, and you may get momentum back, but it's going to be an uphill battle. Do you have any tips or tricks or things that you rely on to stay poised and stay focused and not let those kinds of turns tilt you, where you can remain on track? Because I can say, I mean, it took a lot of experience, it took a lot of practice, it took a lot of mentorship from other people, wherein when I'm playing competitively, not to get discouraged when something like that happens. And a lot of people will fall into that trap, and it'll then influence the rest of that game and perhaps future games to come when you're kind of dwelling on that. Do you have any strategies that you lean on to make sure that those kinds of bad scenarios don't influence future turns and future moves that you have?
That's something that I'm still like really trying to work on and put effort into, and I by no means claim to be like perfect at it, but it is something that even before entering the battle harden, I was trying to consciously like be aware of and approach from a good mindset. Because when in the calling indie, I had a round 1 loss, and I think I kind of let that get to me more than I should. Or like, more than was healthy. I probably let it affect my play a little bit in future rounds. Like, wow, it's like I'm already, starting off at a disadvantage. Losing round 1 doesn't feel good. And if I had just kind of focused on the game and not focused on like, oh, here's how I'm doing in the tournament, this probably, like, I probably can't top 8, I probably whatever. I think by like kind of letting those negative thoughts float around your brain while you're trying to play, it really does like mess with your ability to just focus and like find the best line. So I mean, it's really just anytime I'm feeling super high pressure, like I need, like, if I win this game, it's a PTI, or if I win this game, it's a gold foiler, like what, anytime I start putting a lot of pressure on myself mentally, I try to just kind of revert back to that like state of, I really like playing this card game. I'm playing this card game because it's fun, and like,
Yeah.
here's this matchup, it's interesting, here are these lines, and then just like really try to like go back into like focusing on the game itself and forgetting about the tournament that I'm playing, I guess.
That's I mean, it's a very mature outlook, and that's something that a lot of people never are able to break away from, is being able to both, you can have fun and still play competitively, and making sure that you keep this all in focus. Like, what is the mission of this? Is this, is it do or die? Like, how important is it? And you know what, that's part of it. And leaving behind, sometimes just sort of dropping that luggage and moving forward is quite important. So, that's wise words from Brodie Spurlock here. And that final game that you played, just walk us through that. First of all, who did you play? What was that matchup? But more so, I want to know that moment where you're mapping out your turn, and that moment where it clicks that you've got it, that you've won the tournament.
This is a good one. There's definitely a key moment. So it starts off, my opponent is JP Coleman playing Briar. And first of all, I was just happy to see a Briar in the finals. I really like Briar Blitz deck, and I think that like post ban, it is perhaps one of the more underestimated decks in the format. So just a slight comment there. I think that it's a really fun deck. I don't think it's quite as good as Vishrai, but it was just cool to see a Briar have done that well. And so this is like a very much an aggro race sort of Runeblade mirror. I was going first, which is a big advantage. If I remember correctly, the game started off kind of slow. Neither of us had fantastic hands. I think on turn 1 I made like 1 rune chant and arsenaled and passed. Briar's turn was, I think they had a hand of like all or mostly blues. They played Force of Nature and then attacked for like 5 or 6 or something with a blue burgeoning, I think it was. And at that point I had a hand of all like red attack actions without go again, which is like the worst thing Viscera can see. So I blocked 2. On my turn, I spent 2 cards to do essentially 5 damage. It was Spellblade Strike for 4 physical, the 1 rune chant from last turn, and it made a new rune chant, and then pass turn back. And then, after kind of a slow start in what is usually a 2-turn game, we both kind of drew insane hands. I had the kind of ideal like Mordred Tide Viscera hand, like, okay, as long as I get my turn back, I'm going to do really big things. And Briar started off with Red Plunder Run from Arsenal,
Oh,
Force of Nature,
yeah.
Make Embodiment of Lightning, and then Enlighten Strike for 10 go again. If it hits, I draw 2 cards.
Oh, God. And this was
That's what I
against you,
said.
and this is you're saying that this is the turning point in the finals for you. Okay, continue this story, because this is already sounding quite turbulent.
So I think this is one of the key moments in the tournament that I kind of looked at and was thankful that I was able to kind of keep myself in just a, I don't know, a relatively like just calm and balanced mindset, because I think that if I had been playing this game more scared or just less like really calculated, I probably would have just snap blocked the E-Strike with, you know, some like 3 cards and an equipment or something to stop the draw 2. Because I think I could have theoretically shut down the rest of Briar. I believe when they attacked with E-Strike, they only had 1 card left in hand. So I felt relatively confident that if I wanted to, I could use pretty much my whole hand and all of my equipment to block out and stop the Plunder Run draw. But I kind of ran some numbers on how likely I thought it was they could kill me if I took the E-Strike and then they drew the cards and then, you know, presented their whole hand. And I felt confident that if I took 10, unless they got the dream draw, I could still have a powerful Mordred turn. So I chose to take 10, go to 10, and it draws 2 cards. And then they followed up with Blue Captain's Call for +2 into Snatch. Snatch for 6. If it hits, I draw another 2 cards.
Okay.
So
And they still had, I guess, I'm assuming they were running Snapdragons?
yes, they still had snaps active.
Okay.
They're like available, yes. So at this point they have an additional 1 card in hand, and I had 2 thoughts. One was I'm at 10. I can't go to 4 and then battle through another 3 cards. So like I am going to block this Snatch, but then I was considering playing around Red Lightning Press. Because I think if the final card in their hand had been Red Lightning Press, it's possible I would have lost this game or been incredibly far behind, because the draw to off of Lightning Press would have been terrifying. I decided not to play around it entirely. I just blocked 7 with a Meet and Greet from hand and then like 2 equipment. And if they had Lightning Pressed, I would have taken 2 damage and they would have drawn 2 cards. Thankfully, that was not the card. They did end up still flipping Snapdragon and pitching their last card to go 2 and 2 with the weapon. So at this point, I'm at 6, Briar's at 15, and we go to my turn, where I have a Swarming Gloomveil in Arsenal. I believe my hand is Mordred Tide, another Swarming Gloomveil, and a Revel in Runeblood.
All right.
So,
okay.
this is kind of the key turn where I first play Mordred Tide, because that's what this raid does. You just play Mordred Tide first, then think. Mostly joking. But I had 1 Rune Chant already in play, and I had made 0 this turn, so I decided to go ahead and pop Vexing Quill Hand to put me to 4 chance, and then attack with Gloomveil. And the only reason for popping Vexing was so that the Swarming Gloomveil hit effect would be active, and if my Briar opponent took any damage from Gloomveil, assuming they also took the Rune Chants, they would be at 10 life or lower, which means that Revel in Runeblood plus Rosetta Thorn would be enough arcane to kill them. So that was kind of like the critical point where I'm over here like trying to not show any facial expressions, but kind of like my heart pounding. Like I know that if this card hits, I have a guaranteed win. And it gets better. So Briar's at 15. So he reaches for his life pad and goes down to 11, taking the 4 rune chance. And then he reaches for the life pad again, and I reach for mine, like he's about to just take the 4 and go to 7. And then he pauses. He puts his pencil back down, and then he stares at the card for like 2 minutes, which is just perfectly reasonable. It's a hard decision, but like I'm over here just knowing that if it hits, I win the game. So just trying to regulate my, excitement and beating heart.
Poker face times 1,000 right there, right? Yeah.
It's kind of hard, but yeah, I maintained my best poker face, and then as it turned out, I think he based on how he reacted later in the turn, I definitely think he knew that if he took the damage and I had Rebel, he was going to lose the game. But he made probably just like a reasonable like calculated risk assessment and decided to take the 4, hoping that the rest of my hand would only be a Rosetta Thorn and maybe I would Arsenal or something.
Right.
Because he probably had a big turn coming back, but he did go to 7, and then as soon as I put Rebel and Runeblood on the table, he conceded, and that was how it ended.
Holy Moses! Like, it just first of all, it all comes back to the fact that you had the steadfast poise to just stare down that 10 spot of the E-Strike with the 2-card draw chaser on it and just say, sure, send me the bill, like let's dance, and then basically being presented with another awful choice to make, but ultimately making the correct choices and just making sure that you kept that poise and you made sure that you didn't like. It's such a psychological game at the same time where it's not just about making proper decisions, but it's also about not feeding your opponent any information that they might be able to pick up on. And I mean, great game. Like it's like you mentioned, it's a 2-turn game in these cases, and ultimately it could have gone either way. But you made the correct decisions. You played around what you should play around, or you called the bluffs as they were, and that was awesome. So again, congratulations to you. And one of the major elements that, I mean, obviously, like I've spoken to you multiple times. We've corresponded through email. We've spoken a bunch actually, and to me it means nothing, but to some it's a factor. And I want to talk to you about your age, because in reality you are much younger than many of the field out there. And trust me, all I need to do is look at the demographics of who listens to my podcast. It is heavily skewed to the 30 plus range, the 25 years and up, the 30 plus range. Not to say that this is a game only for older. Well, I say older. I mean, I'm 36. I consider myself young, and so you are clearly much younger. But for yourself, was this ever a factor in terms of your success? Because obviously you're probably in school. You've got your own life that you have to deal with. You have your own challenges. Was it ever an intimidating factor when you got into competitive card gaming, when you go out there and a lot of the field are much older than you? It has affected me. Like when I was 12 or 13 playing Star Wars cards, when I was like 14 or 15 was when I first played in a tournament, and I was there with people that were 15, 20 years older than I was, and I felt intimidated. I didn't want to ask the right questions. I didn't want to, challenge anything or concede anything to any, like, or I was more inclined to just let things happen. But yourself as somebody, so you're 16, I believe, or turning 16?
I am 16, yeah.
You're 16. So, talk to us a little bit about how age factors into this in terms of how you play, because clearly you're a world-class player. That's not what's in doubt. But the challenges that you face being 16 versus those who, this might be their entire life.
I definitely think there's kind of a 2-part answer to this. One is just, yes, I am in school and I have like, responsibilities that a 16-year-old has, but also like all the adult players have a job that they go to and they have adult responsibilities. And, but like it does kind of affect, I guess, like my relationship with the game outside of actually playing it, like being able to get to tournaments and like, I whole number of factors, and it's all leading up to I could not do any of this without my mom. And I know you're going to talk to her next, but basically just a massive, enormous thank you to her for like supporting me in playing card games and trying to be competitive with it and allowing me to travel for it and all these things. Um, I'm just so endlessly appreciative of her because as a 16-year-old, I think without her support, there's no way I'd be able to do this. And so, um, I'm enormously grateful. And then the second part of the answer is kind of like within the game, playing against adults. I don't think it's not so much intimidating necessarily as kind of like you said, like I feel like sometimes like these people are older than me, they have more life experience, and so I don't want like I feel a level of just kind of um uh like 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 respect and like I don't want to like question things necessarily as much or like um like I'm also playing this game. I also like I have my own kind of opinions and thoughts and everything, but like part of it is like me being a child, it feels like um I don't know, I tend to just like defer and like respect the opinions of people who are older than me because uh they've got more experience and everything. And so I like which is all basically all that to say like it's just kind of it's an interesting dynamic. I really like talking to people and like making friends within the Flesh and Blood community, but then it's also like I just like it's like a tiny bit of like, huh, you're all older than me. I feel a little bit like um I don't know what the word is, but kind of just like
Like I get what you're saying. It's because at the same time there's certain connections that you might not be able to make. You don't have the same experiences as everyone else does. Whereas, you know, you show up to a tournament and some people might be complaining about the fact that they had to convince their wife or their girlfriend to be able to play in a tournament, right? Whereas for yourself, it might be a different, challenge that you have. So it's hard sometimes to connect with people on that similar level. And I, I can relate to that. I've been in that position, but I can also say that I haven't. I was never as good as you, nor do I ever think I can be as good as you at this game. But at the same time, I didn't handle it as well as you clearly have, and that's awesome because you're not intimidated and you're backing it up, but you're also approaching it from a perspective of I'm going to let my gameplay do the talking, like and that's perfectly fine. Whereas I usually rely on my big mouth to get me through things, but that's kind of how it goes. And honestly, Brodie, it's been awesome to watch the progression of your career, but I'm curious to know where you're planning on taking this. You and I have spoken privately about your aspirations from more of a broadcast or a content creation perspective, but talk to us a little bit about what you're hoping to achieve down the line. You've got endless amounts of runway ahead of you, so you got so much time to pick up steam and take off here. But that could be from a content creation perspective, but it could also be from a competitive perspective. What is Brodie Spurlock looking to accomplish, in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years?
yeah, I have a lot of just kind of like goals and ideas for the future in both of those fields. I want to first say just what you were saying a minute ago is exactly right. Like it's I connect with these people through the game and everything about the game, but then like our life experience and our kind of lifestyles around playing the game and getting to tournaments and everything like you said is different. And so that's kind of an interesting communication dynamic. I just wanted to agree, and you articulated it better than I did. But yeah, as far as aspirations for the future, I definitely like when it comes to Flesh and Blood, my main goal is just to, compete, see how far I can get, um, play at the Pro Tour, play at Worlds, and just kind of get to learn from and play against some of the best players in the world. That's one of the most exciting things for me. And I'm so excited for New Jersey just to kind of get to step into that field, I guess. But then as far as content creation and that whole area, I don't have super specific plans yet, but I do know at some point I would love to write articles and or make videos just about strategic content, deck guides, metagames. I specifically love just writing in general, and I think that I would have a great time just kind of expressing my ideas and like, whatever knowledge I've collected about gameplay and decks in Flesh and Blood, kind of putting that into article form and connecting with an audience in some way. I have not started that journey yet, but that's definitely something I'm looking to in the future kind of pursue. And right now I'm just focusing on like testing and getting ready for the Pro Tour and seeing where things go as far as competitive tournaments. And then at some point soon I look to start perhaps writing articles for someone else, or put those somewhere on the internet. I haven't figured out the details yet, and starting a YouTube channel.
Well, my man, I mean, you've got plenty of accolades already to your name. The credibility is established, as it were. I know that's one of the things that I spoke to you, I think, several weeks ago when you were inquiring about how to get into this business. And what I said was, it's a hard sell to sell yourself to everybody. You could be good at a game, you could be entertaining, sure, but one of the things that people want is accolades. They want kind of like a resume, right? And yours is already piling up. Can you just walk through some of your major Flesh and Blood achievements? Just imagine this could be kind of like a platform for somebody who wants to say, we want to hire Brodie to write articles for us. I mean, when it comes down to it, what do you have under your belt already that people will say, like, damn, I should listen to this guy?
All right, I guess I can walk through it.
This is
I
your
started
chance.
playing.
Brag, baby. This is it.
Alrighty. I started playing in December, like I said, and then my first real kind of step into like the competitive space was ProQuest season, because before that I kind of started playing right as nationals were wrapping up. It was off season and I was just learning the game. And then whenever they started ProQuest in 2022, I top aided 5 of those this season.
Jesus. Okay. Yeah. Easy. No problem. Go ahead.
I was playing Viscera at all of them. I believe I I topped 4. So I actually believe out of my 5 top 8s, 3 of them were a loss in the semifinals to Prism specifically, which it was just kind of funny. I kept losing these games to Prism exactly in the semifinals, so it became this like curse, like don't play Prism in the semifinals. But and then 2 of them I did end up getting first at.
So you got two ProQuest wins under your belt. All right,
yes.
that's a good start right there. No problem, sure. For somebody who's been playing for what, like 2-3 months by then. All right,
Yeah.
keep going.
And then so I played at ND, as you know. I did not make day 2 of the calling. I lost a couple Runeblade mirrors, and sadly, I was a bit disappointed, but also like it was my first major tournament. I did all right. I ended up 4-3 on day 1, and then the battle hardened. I went 5-1 with a loss in round 4, and unfortunately, that also did not make top 8. So Indy was a fantastic experience. I really enjoyed it. I got to meet you. I got to meet a lot of other great people. I do not have anything fancy to post on my resume, I suppose, from that weekend, but I certainly don't regret it at all.
That, trust me, just in general, that just being there and going 5-1 at the battle hardened that was running alongside the calling is, I mean, it's a tough go. You went 5-1 and you got bounced. You lost in round 4, and that wasn't good enough for a top 8. I mean, it was losing the last round or you're out. That was basically it. So it was tough to swallow in that regard. But my man, your career is already on a rocket ship here. You've been playing for 4 months, maybe 5 or so, and here you are already just piling up the ProQuest wins. You're going to be on the Pro Tour in New Jersey. I'm going to see you in a few weeks, which is going to be awesome again. Brodie, I to quote Sheev Palpatine, we will be following your career with great interest, my friend. So congratulations, big time, my man. And if there's anything you want to say before, because I wanted to speak a little bit to your mother, Sharlotte, as well, because I met her in Indianapolis also. But before we say goodbye to Brodie, anything else you wanna slide in here? As I mean, you're a hot commodity. You're like a free agent right now. You're basically like, the draft's coming up, baby. So this is where you kind of you can drop some extra wisdom to get everybody sold on Brodie Spurlock.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me. I am interested in if anyone wants to reach me at Brodie Spurlock on Twitter. I just set up Twitter the other day. Or for any sort of like potential article writing inquiries, something like that. I am interested in getting that started. I was also going to say the one other thing I didn't mention previously. I did actually take home a skirmish win as well the weekend before the battle hardened. Just wanted to, didn't
Dude,
get there.
toss it
I was
in there.
listing the things.
When you have so many wins under your belt, sometimes you just forget something. Like they fall out of your pocket. You got so many, you know.
But yeah, no, I think I am definitely excited for the future, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in Jersey. But yeah, just thanks for having me on. And yeah,
it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, sincerely, ladies and gentlemen. Brodie Spurlock, easily another 30 years of Brodie Spurlock dominance is what I'm calling. So that's what we're gonna have here. Brodie's gonna be my age, and he's gonna have like 18 world championships under his belt by then. But good to talk to you, my man. Let's get your mom on, and we'll wrap it up. But my dude, it was awesome to talk to you, brother. Anytime you need anything, just shoot me an email, shoot me a DM, do whatever. I'm your guy. I'll help you out wherever I can.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
No worries, dude. No worries, dude.
Hi.
Hey, Charlotte. It's nice to see you again. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you too.
Awesome. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time. It really does mean a lot to me because there's a lot of people who are very, very encouraged by Brodie's success. And what I always mention whenever someone brings his name up to me is I say, there's an excellent support system behind him. And I got to meet that support system. So I wanted to make sure that people were aware of just how important that support system is. So I'm so happy that you're here. Sharlotte Spurlock, Brodie's mother, but more than that, somebody whom I got to play against in Indianapolis in one of the side events, who was playing Chain, which already scared the living daylights out of me because Chain is terrifying. But Sharlotte, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time. Honestly, this means the world to me.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So the first thing I want to ask about, before we get to your own gameplay and your own involvement in Flesh and Blood, specifically in regards to Brodie, I want to know how you got involved with Flesh and Blood specifically. And most people would assume that it was Brodie who maybe, roped you into it, but that might not be the case. Maybe you're a card player, by yourself here. But just maybe talk to us a little bit about how you got involved with Flesh and Blood.
Okay, well, it was Brodie, but I have 3 boys, and so they've all played Magic the Gathering, and they tried to get me to play that, and it just never really clicked for me. But when Brodie started playing Flesh and Blood, then he wanted to teach me. He wanted someone to play with, and also I was driving him to these events almost every day. Anytime he could go to an event, he wanted to go. So I just thought, instead of sitting there doing nothing, I may as well play the game. But yeah, it was definitely Brodie that pulled me in. But I just when he taught me how to play the game, I really liked it. It clicked for me. So I think it's a lot of fun.
It's definitely a lot of fun. And what's amazing and like I mentioned, one thing that people need to understand is that I have been there, and the general demographic, the dominating demographic of those who play this game typically are of an 25 or plus. It seems to be quite common, and in which case, when you're 25 and up, usually you're living on your own, you've got everything sort of set out, you've got your own means of transportation, everything is fine. But I know the trials and tribulations of relying on people to get me to various different card shops and events and whatnot, and I owe a lot to my own mother, my father, and my sister for bringing me to these places and allowing me to explore and enjoy this. So the first thing is thank you on behalf. I know that Brodie talked you up major and gave a lot of immense amounts of credit and love to you for how you supported him through his success. But ultimately, from myself, it's important. So I'm sure I speak for a vast amount of people that, people like yourself are so crucial and important to the game, because you are what keeps, the younger generation afloat. And not just for driving him places, because it's not just that, but your interest in it and your support in it is immaculate. So cheers to you. I'm done flattering you though. That's where that's where that ends. But I want to ask you your support for your sons, and you're mentioning you're driving you drive Brodie out sometimes, multiple times a week. What's the furthest you've traveled to bring Brodie to a tournament?
Well, so far I think Indianapolis was the furthest I've traveled, but we are scheduled to go to New Jersey. So we live in Texas, and he's trying to talk me into France. I haven't made a decision about that yet, but he's working on me. I'm researching. I'm not sure if we'll do that, but it's possible. See how many tours I can get him to do.
I was gonna say how many like lawn mowing sessions is that? Like that is quite the trek. Taking out the trash at, let's say, like, $2 a pop. How much is a flight? Yeah, that's one hell of a favor to ask. But I mean, Brodie has clearly demonstrated not just the poise and the maturity and the drive, but also the skill set, and it's resulted in significant success. So, when did you, like, Brodie was talking about having this as a career. I myself do card gaming as a career from a broadcast perspective. It's hardly an easy or straightforward or lucrative career in any means, but I got support from my family when I decided to do this. I essentially left what was considered kind of like the quote-unquote family business to go pursue this on my own, and it was met with just nothing but positive support. Do you see that in Brodie as well? When he kind of started winning tournaments or whatnot, did it click in your mind that this is something from a career perspective that perhaps he can pursue and pursue fruitfully?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, when he asked me, I guess it was late last year, if he could try to play this game professionally, I was like, oh, sure, go ahead. Like, I was just thinking, whatever, you can try anything you want, honey. And then when he actually started like winning, I was like, oh, I might be in trouble here. But no, I mean, I think that's great. I've tried to raise my kids to follow their passions, and we're kind of entrepreneurish, especially Brodie. I mean, he kind of came out with a suit on and ready to go. He's very driven. And so yeah, I can see whatever he's passionate about. I can see him making a career out of it, because it's just kind of what he does. And that's one of the reasons that we homeschool, so that we can have that flexibility. We get all the basics done, and then I kind of let them pursue their passions. And I think Flesh and Blood too, like, as far as him being in school, I mean, I don't think any of his subjects are as challenging as this game. So they're definitely using, some serious brain power. But yeah, I can see him pursuing this as a career. If he can figure out a way to do it, I think that's his plan, and I will support him in that. So
it's funny to me, because sometimes when I'm discussing with other people who pursue this as a career, something that they can make ends meet with, a lot of the times the factor is like, okay, travel costs and rent and bills and mortgage, etc. And for Brodie, I don't think most of those are ever going to be too much of a concern for the short term. But it's fascinating that you mentioned that in itself. I am a huge advocate for education. I think that education is something that everyone should obviously pursue. Knowledge is power. Open your mind, absorb as much as you can. And that comes in so many different forms and facets. And for you mentioning that, being involved in a game like Flesh and Blood, it does teach, it's not going to, in terms of applicable skills, it's not going to teach you how to wield a romping club, when you're going to do the groceries or something. But at the same time, just the critical analysis of things, the planning, the strategy, the mindset of that, I think that it's a very good learning tool, and it has shown with Brodie. And I can confidently say that when I met you in Indianapolis and you said, oh, you should meet my son Brodie, I was blown away at meeting this young man, because I was like, I wish I was a quarter of as refined and mature and and smart as this gentleman was. So it's just awesome to see that it comes from the support system, which is so important. But
thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Playing chain. This is something that I don't have I don't have the fortitude to do, because I don't have the. It's frightened me when I first entered the game. It was what was most dominant, and I didn't want to jump into the pool of what everyone was playing. But I recognized how strong it was, but also how skill intensive it was to pilot and operate. You yourself, when we played, you played Chain, and you made life a living hell for me in that game. I did win the game. I was playing Starvo, so everyone's gonna immediately, but I clearly, I'm like, yeah, that's Brodie's mom, all right. Like, there's some significant skill. What had you land on Chain? Because it's not an easy hero to pilot.
Well, when I started playing, when Brodie first taught me, he had one of the, just like the pre-made decks, like the box that you buy at the store with a pre-made deck, and it was a Chain deck. So that's what I learned on. And then I immediately started playing Briar, because that's what he was playing, and the easiest way for me to learn was just to kind of play with him and copy what he was doing. So when I was, so that was when Briar was kind of like, the hot deck, and then so many cards got banned that it was no longer so fantastic. So then I think Brodie was kind of taking a little time to figure out what deck he was going to switch to, and he was doing some research and playing different decks. And the first one that he started playing after Briar was Chain, which is something I already knew. So I'm like, I'll just do that. I was really just kind of copying Brodie. He quickly moved on to other things and landed on Viserai, but I don't know. I think Chain is fun, and I know there are a lot of things that you can do with Chain that are more complicated that I haven't attempted yet, like pitch stacking. Maybe I'll get to that. I don't know. But I'm not really like trying to be a professional at this game, or, I'm just playing for fun, and I think it's a lot of fun. So I just kind of stuck with it. I never got to play Chain before the cards got banned. I didn't get to play that version of Chain, so that probably would have been really fun.
Oh yeah, that's like seeing Star Wars before all the special edition nonsense was changed to it. Like that, it was that supercharged. So I mean, it's still strong, but again, kudos to you for just diving into a fairly complex hero that has a high skill ceiling on it, and you played it very adeptly, and that's something that I can't say that I can do, because it's again, challenges like that terrify me. I'd rather talk about the cards than play those ones. There's so much going on. You've mentioned also that this was something that you're doing, to support Brodie and Brodie's aspirations, but how about your own? And you're mentioning that you do enjoy this game. Obviously, you wouldn't be playing it if it wasn't something that you enjoy doing. But do you have your own aspirations or your own goals surrounding the game, separate from Brodie's?
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, for me, a big part of it is just bonding with my kids. So I have 3 boys. One's already left the house, but I have 2 still at home, and we homeschool. So, I mean, if all the work gets done, we can sit around, playing Flesh and Blood, and that's a lot of fun. And I mean, even the traveling, like we're getting to do that together as a family. So for me, that's a big part of it. And then also just offering them support. But as far as me personally, just like, I would say I'm just to have fun. I'm not, if I win more than I lose, then that's fantastic. Like, I don't really have any aspirations to try to win a calling. I think that's pretty unlikely at this point. I don't really have that much time to like study the game. I just do enough to try to hang in there and be somewhat decent.
It's awesome because every I mean, as far as I know, Brodie doesn't necessarily have a team that he practices with. Am I correct?
No, right now it's just he practices with me and Seth, and then we do go to local events almost every day of the week. I feel like 5 to 6 times a week, but no, he does not have a team that he's on right now.
And the reason I bring that up is that a lot of the Pro Tour is just populated with players that have a support system of teams, of other pros who are there to share knowledge, practice, theory craft amongst each other. But there's always what we call the team mom. The team mom is the player who either hasn't qualified for a particular tournament, is not necessarily gunning for a win, but they're there to make sure that the rest of the team is well taken care of, that all of their needs and their worries are as taken care of and as, quelled as possible. I have a team mom, self-proclaimed, because whenever I'm out competing and my friend is there, he'll make sure he's like, do you have water? Are you good? You need a coffee? You this, you that? You taken care of? Do you need me to hold your bag? Do you need to go to the bathroom? And I'm like, all right, mom, like, relax. Like, it's one of those things. But here you are, and it's not just a matter of being the team mom. It's the fact that Brodie, without a professional team, is out there just laying waste to the competition. And and you yourself are part of that team. And that in itself is quite a fascinating accolade to have in itself, that I practice with the battle-hardened champ. I practice with the Pro Tour player, the 2-time Pro Quest champ. That in itself is a feather in your cap as well. Like, you should wear that quite proudly.
I do, actually, I do. I mean, I wouldn't be able to play as well as I do, if it wasn't Brodie teaching me and basically giving me tips after almost every game. So.
He's a marvel, and I told him, I said, you're somebody that I can see 20 years down the line when I'm old and gray. I will look back and see Brodie Spurlock just dominating tournaments still, So again, I sincerely appreciate your time, Sharlotte, and it was a sincere pleasure to meet you in Indianapolis, and I will see you again in New Jersey, and I'm so looking forward to seeing you guys again.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure to see you again, and we'll see you in New Jersey.
Damn right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the Instant Speed Podcast in Response Edition with Brodie Spurlock and Sharlotte Spurlock. We'll catch you next week on Instant Speed.